In the depths of a moonless night, a single sound pierced the usual stillness of the remote border crossing. Among the abandoned vehicles and forgotten cargo, something stirred. Not the wind through empty containers, or the distant call of night birds, but a sound that would haunt those who heard it. From within a battered truck, a faint cry echoed across the empty stretch of land. That cry belonged to a 3-month-old bear cub, torn from its mother in the wilderness by ruthless poachers. Smuggled across countries in darkness, the cub's journey would soon become more than just another wildlife trafficking case. Its discovery would spark an unprecedented international search, leading scientists to a remarkable genetic discovery that would rewrite what we knew about bear species. As the world watched, wildlife experts and conservationists raced against time to save not just one cub, but an entire species previously thought lost to history. This is a story of survival against impossible odds, of humanity's capacity for both cruelty and compassion, and of a tiny bear cub whose discovery would change wildlife protection forever. It begins with 2 Border Patrol officers, a forgotten truck, and a whimper in the dark that would echo around the world. The night air hung heavy with autumn chill as Officer Reeves made her routine patrol along the remote border checkpoint. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping across the empty stretch of land that separated 2 countries. 20 years on the job had taught her to trust her instincts, and tonight, something felt different. The gravel crunched beneath her boots as she walked her usual route. The moon cast long shadows across the barren landscape, creating strange shapes that danced in the corner of her vision. Her partner, Officer Caney, radioed in their position as they approached an abandoned section of the road. That's when they saw it. A weathered delivery truck, partially hidden behind overgrown bushes, its white paint peeling and faded. No tire tracks led to or from the vehicle, as if it had materialized from thin air. Officer Reeves raised her hand, signaling Caney to approach with caution. As they drew closer, the silence broke. A soft scratching sound emerged from within the truck, followed by what could only be described as a whimper. Not human, but definitely alive. Reeves's heart rate quickened as she remembered countless cases of wildlife trafficking they'd encountered over the years. The truck's cabin was empty, dust settling on the dashboard, indicating it had been abandoned for hours. But the cargo area told a different story. Among scattered crates and boxes, one small container stood out. It moved ever so slightly, accompanied by those same desperate sounds that first caught their attention. Caney called for backup while Reeves approached the crate. The sounds grew more distinct with each step. Using her flashlight, she examined the container. Tiny holes dotted its surface, and through them, she caught glimpses of movement inside. The crate had no proper ventilation, no water supply, nothing that suggested humane transport of any living being. With backup minutes away, Reeves made a decision. The creature inside couldn't wait. Using her tools, she carefully began opening the crate, her hands steady despite the urgency of the situation. As the lid lifted, time seemed to stop. 2 frightened eyes stared back at her, reflecting her flashlight beam. A bear cub, no more than a few months old, cowered in the corner of the crate. Its dark fur was matted, its small body trembling with fear and exhaustion. A crude collar around its neck attached to a short chain spoke of its cruel captivity. "Control, we're going to need wildlife services," Reeves radioed, her voice tight with emotion. "We have an infant bear, severely distressed." She fought to maintain her professional composure, but the sight of the terrified cub struck deep into her heart. The little bear let out another whimper, softer this time, as if it had spent all its energy trying to be heard. Reeves noticed its labored breathing, the way its ribs showed through its fur, telling a story of neglect and suffering. In all her years of border patrol, she had never encountered something that affected her quite like this. As red and blue lights began flashing in the distance, announcing the arrival of backup, Reeves knew this was just the beginning. What they had stumbled upon that night wasn't just a case of illegal wildlife trafficking. It was the start of something much bigger, a story that would soon capture the world's attention and change everything they thought they knew about wildlife protection. The tiny bear cub, alone and afraid in that forgotten truck, had no way of knowing it was about to become the center of an international sensation. Its journey of survival was just beginning. Spring had painted the wilderness in vibrant shades of green when the mother bear first emerged from her den with three tiny cubs. Nestled in the remote valleys far from human settlements, the ancient forest provided everything they needed. The smallest of her cubs, with distinctive golden flecks in its dark fur, stayed closest to her side, learning the ways of survival in the wild. Through warm days, she taught them to forage among berry bushes and overturn rocks for insects. The smallest cub showed unusual curiosity, often studying its reflection in clear mountain streams or watching fish dart beneath the surface. At night, they slept in the safety of hollow trees or natural caves, the mother's protective presence keeping them safe from the forest's other predators. But the wilderness held dangers beyond natural predators. Deep in these remote mountains, a species of bear thought extinct for centuries had survived, unknown to science. The mother and her cubs carried this ancient bloodline, making them invaluable to those who knew what to look for. The poachers had watched the family for weeks. They knew the cubs' routines, the mother's habits, and most importantly, the unique markings that made the smallest cub so valuable. These weren't ordinary hunters, but part of a sophisticated network that supplied rare animals to private collectors willing to pay fortunes for living pieces of natural history. On that fateful morning, the attack came swiftly. Smoke bombs filled the clearing where the family foraged, disorienting the mother bear. Tranquilizer darts whistled through the air. The mother fought fiercely, giving her cubs time to flee. But in the chaos, the smallest cub became separated. Its confused cries led the poachers right to it. The poachers worked with practiced efficiency. While some kept the mother at bay, others captured the tiny cub, forcing it into a small metal carrier. Its terrified cries echoed through the forest as they retreated, leaving behind a scene of destruction. The mother bear, recovering from the tranquilizers, searched desperately for her missing cub, her calls unanswered in the sudden silence of the forest. Within hours, the captured cub entered a shadowy world of illegal wildlife trafficking. From the wilderness, it passed through a series of hidden locations, each handler knowing only the next link in the chain. The network operated like a well-oiled machine, moving precious cargo across borders through carefully planned routes. The cub's value grew with each handoff. Rumors spread through exclusive circles about a living specimen of an extinct bear species. Wealthy collectors began placing bids, sight unseen. The network's organizers saw an opportunity beyond their usual trafficking operations. This single cub could open doors to a new market, one dealing in living pieces of natural history. But greed made them careless. The rush to deliver such valuable cargo led to mistakes. Instead of their usual meticulous planning, they pushed for faster transport. The cub's health began to deteriorate under the stress of constant movement in poor conditions. What had started as a carefully orchestrated operation began to unravel. In their haste, they chose a remote border crossing, believing it would be less guarded. The driver, spooked by routine patrol lights in the distance, abandoned the truck and its precious cargo. In doing so, they unknowingly set in motion events that would expose not just their operation, but an entire underground network of rare animal trafficking. Back in the wilderness, the mother bear continued her relentless search. Her two remaining cubs stayed close as she traveled further than ever before, following the fading scent of her stolen child. She could not know that her smallest cub's journey was about to intersect with human compassion in ways that would change everything. For the tiny bear cub, each moment since its capture became a nightmare of strange sounds and unfamiliar sensations. The metal carrier, barely large enough for movement, rattled with every bump of the road. The forest scents of pine and earth faded, replaced by exhaust fumes and unfamiliar human odors. In darkness, the cub could only whimper, calling for a mother who couldn't hear. The first transfer happened in a dimly lit warehouse. Rough hands moved the cub from its carrier into a wooden crate. Someone forced water from a bottle into its mouth, spilling most of it. Stale bread and old fruit were pushed through the small air holes, hardly enough to sustain a growing bear. The cub's once glossy fur became matted and dull, its golden flecks hidden under layers of grime. Days blurred together in a haze of movement. The crates shifted from trucks to vans, sometimes stored in damp basements or noisy garages. Each new handler brought different voices, different smells, and different levels of cruelty or indifference. Some ignored the cub's cries completely. Others prodded it with sticks through the holes, checking if it was still alive and responsive. The physical toll mounted quickly. The confined space prevented natural movement, causing the cub's muscles to weaken. Its appetite diminished with stress and fear. Sleep came only in exhausted bursts, interrupted by sudden movements or loud noises. The distinctive golden flecks in its fur, once so valuable to the poachers, began to fade under the strain of captivity. One handler, newer to the network, almost exposed everything. Stopped at a routine checkpoint, his nervous behavior attracted attention. Police dogs approached the vehicle, and the cub, sensing their presence, began to cry out. Only a timely distraction by another network member prevented discovery. After that, the cub's transport became even more secretive. The closest call came 3 days before the border. A wildlife officer, investigating reports of suspicious activity, came within feet of the cub's hiding place in an abandoned storage unit. The cub, too weak by then to make much noise, could only watch through a tiny crack as potential rescue walked away. Its once curious eyes had dulled, the spark of wild intelligence fading under the weight of captivity. Temperature extremes marked the final leg of the journey. During the day, the cub sweltered in metal containers left in the sun. At night, bitter cold seeped through the thin walls of its prison. Survival instinct alone kept it holding on, though its spirit seemed to dim with each passing hour. The strong, inquisitive cub from the forest was disappearing, replaced by a shadow of its former self. The border crossing was planned for the darkest part of the night. The cub's crate, now hidden among legitimate cargo in a delivery truck, represented the culmination of weeks of calculated cruelty. But exhaustion and greed had made the traffickers sloppy. Their careful planning gave way to rushed decisions and poor timing. When the truck's engine died near the border, panic spread through the trafficking network. The driver, ordered to stay with the valuable cargo, instead abandoned everything in the darkness. The cub, barely conscious, sensed the sudden stillness. For the first time in weeks, the constant movement stopped. In the quiet that followed, as Border Patrol flashlights began sweeping the area, the cub gathered its remaining strength. Its cry, weak but determined, carried through the night air. That small sound, born of desperation and hope, would soon change everything. The discovery of the bear cub set off a chain of events that no one at the border station was prepared to handle. Within hours of Officer Reeves's discovery, the small outpost transformed into a hub of frantic activity. Local wildlife authorities arrived first, bringing emergency medical supplies and specialized transport equipment. The cub's condition shocked even the most experienced among them. Initial examination revealed the severity of the situation. The cub was severely dehydrated, underweight, and showing signs of physical trauma. But something else caught the attention of Dr. Marcus Walsh, the senior wildlife veterinarian. The golden flecks in the cub's fur, visible even through weeks of dirt and neglect, triggered a memory from his research years. News of the rescue spread like wildfire. What started as a local story exploded across international media within days. The image of the tiny bear, peering out from beneath a warm blanket at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, became a symbol of the fight against wildlife trafficking. Social media platforms erupted with millions sharing the cub's story, demanding justice and better protection for endangered wildlife. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A geneticist at an international wildlife research center recognized unusual patterns in photographs of the cub. The distinctive markings and golden flecks matched decades-old descriptions of a bear species believed extinct for over a century. The possibility was almost too extraordinary to consider. Dr. Walsh coordinated with a team of international experts who flew in from around the world. Blood samples were rushed to specialized laboratories. The cub's DNA analysis began, while wildlife experts worked to stabilize its health. Each day brought new revelations about its unique characteristics, building excitement in the scientific community. The genetic testing results stunned everyone. The cub carried markers of an ancient bear lineage, one that supposedly vanished from the wild generations ago. This wasn't just any trafficked animal, but possibly one of the last members of a species the world thought lost forever. The implications were staggering. Media coverage intensified. News helicopters circled the wildlife center, while journalists from every major network camped outside. The Cubs story became more than just another rescue. It represented hope, a second chance for a species, and a wake-up call about the underground rare animal trade. Conservation organizations mobilized on an unprecedented scale. Offers of support poured in from around the globe. Satellite imagery experts volunteered to help locate the Cubs' original habitat. Wildlife protection agencies from multiple countries formed a joint task force, determined to trace the trafficking network that had nearly destroyed this precious discovery. The cub's health gradually improved under constant care. Its personality began to re-emerge, showing glimpses of the curious, spirited creature it had been in the wild. But questions loomed large. Where had it come from? Could there be others? Most importantly, was its mother still searching? Dr. Walsh and his team faced difficult decisions. The cub needed specialized care, but its genetic significance demanded extraordinary protection measures. Every move, every decision had to balance its immediate welfare against the larger implications of its existence. The world watched and waited. As international authorities pieced together the trafficking route, a more complex picture emerged. The remote region where the cub had been captured held more secrets. Local rangers reported unusual bear sightings in areas previously thought uninhabited. The possibility of a surviving population sparked both hope and urgent concern. The tiny bear, now sleeping safely under 24-hour surveillance, had unknowingly triggered a revolution in wildlife conservation. Its discovery would redraw maps of species distribution, rewrite scientific texts, and reshape international wildlife protection laws. But the most extraordinary part of its journey was still to come. The world's response to the bear cub's discovery surpassed anything seen before in wildlife conservation. Within weeks, major organizations like World Wildlife Fund and International Union for Conservation of Nature redirected resources and teams to the effort. Their mission expanded beyond saving one cub to protecting an entire species thought lost to time. Social media campaigns exploded with unprecedented force. The hashtag #Save the Ancient Bear trended globally for weeks. Children held fundraisers in schools across continents. Artists created powerful works depicting the cub's journey, while celebrities pledged millions to support conservation efforts. The tiny bear's story touched something deep in the human spirit, uniting people across cultures and borders. Private corporations, seeing the public's passionate response, stepped forward with surprising initiatives. Tech giants offered advanced satellite tracking systems to monitor protected areas. Security companies volunteered their expertise to help combat wildlife trafficking. Even shipping companies worldwide implemented stricter cargo screening protocols, determined to prevent similar trafficking attempts. Indigenous communities from the region where the cub was believed to have been taken shared ancient stories of these bears. Their traditional knowledge, passed down through generations, provided invaluable insights into the species' behavior and habitat needs. These communities became essential partners in the conservation efforts, their wisdom bridging the gap between modern science and ancient understanding. Law enforcement agencies across borders began sharing intelligence about wildlife trafficking networks with renewed urgency. The investigation into the cub's capture led to unprecedented cooperation between countries previously reluctant to work together. Raids and arrests followed, exposing trafficking routes that had operated in shadows for decades. Universities worldwide offered research support, with teams of scientists collaborating to understand the species' genetics and ecology. What began as one cub's rescue transformed into a global scientific endeavor. Each new discovery about the species' unique characteristics only heightened the urgency to protect it. Perhaps most surprisingly, several private collectors, moved by the cub's story, came forward with information about similar trafficking attempts. Their testimony helped authorities understand the scope of the illegal rare animal trade. Some even funded sanctuary spaces for rescued wildlife, turning from part of the problem to part of the solution. The public's commitment showed no signs of fading. People demanded stronger wildlife protection laws and better enforcement. Governments responded with new legislation, increasing penalties for wildlife trafficking and allocating more resources to conservation efforts. The movement sparked by one small bear was reshaping environmental policy on a global scale. As weeks passed, the story evolved from a rescue mission to a symbol of hope in conservation. School curriculums began including the case in environmental education. The Cubs' journey demonstrated how individual actions, both harmful and helpful, could impact an entire species' survival. Regular updates about the Cubs' recovery drew millions of viewers online. Each small milestone, from its first proper meal to its growing strength, was celebrated worldwide. But behind these celebrations, experts knew that the most challenging part of the mission still lay ahead. Despite the worldwide attention and support, the bear cub's health remained fragile. Dr. Walsh and his team worked tirelessly, monitoring its condition around the clock. The physical wounds were healing, but the psychological trauma ran deep. The cubs startled at sudden movements and showed signs of severe anxiety, concerning behaviors for a creature meant to roam wild and free. Time was not on their side. The longer the cub stayed in captivity, the harder it would be to return it to the wild. Yet its weakened state demanded careful rehabilitation. The team developed a specialized feeding program, mixing traditional bear diet with supplements designed to boost its immune system. Every gram of weight gain was celebrated, every sign of increased strength noted with hope. The search for a suitable sanctuary became a race of its own. The cub needed a space that balanced security with natural surroundings. Regular facilities wouldn't suffice, not for a specimen of such significance. Experts debated options worldwide, knowing their decision would set a precedent for future conservation efforts. Dr. Walsh noticed something remarkable during the cub's recovery. Despite its trauma, it maintained strong wild instincts. When presented with natural foods, it showed impressive foraging skills. During supervised outdoor sessions, it demonstrated an innate ability to identify edible plants. These observations sparked an idea that would revolutionize wildlife rehabilitation. A breakthrough came from studying satellite imagery of the region where the cub was believed to have been captured. Hidden valleys, untouched by human development, appeared in the data. These remote areas showed signs of bear activity, matching the traditional territories described by local indigenous communities. The team developed an unprecedented plan. Instead of a traditional sanctuary, they proposed creating a protected corridor, a vast stretch of wilderness spanning multiple countries. This would not only provide a safe haven for the cub, but could potentially harbor an undiscovered population of its species. Technology played a crucial role in their solution. Advanced tracking systems, small enough to not impede the cub's movement, but powerful enough to monitor its location, were developed. Drone surveillance would provide additional security while maintaining minimal human contact. The goal was to protect without interfering with natural behavior. The rehabilitation process intensified. The team constructed specialized enclosures that mimicked natural habitats, allowing the cub to strengthen its muscles and develop survival skills. Each day brought new challenges and small victories. The cub learned to climb again, to forage more effectively, and slowly its fear of movement and sounds began to diminish. International agreements were rushed through channels usually bogged down by bureaucracy. The urgency of the situation and worldwide attention pushed governments to act with unprecedented speed. Conservation zones were established, crossing traditional borders, creating safe passages for wildlife movement. As the cub grew stronger, Dr. Walsh observed another fascinating development. Its unique genetic markers seemed to contribute to remarkable healing abilities. This discovery opened new avenues of research in wildlife biology, suggesting the species' survival might hold more significance than anyone initially imagined. The breakthrough happened in a quiet laboratory late one evening. DNA analysis revealed something extraordinary in the cub's genetic profile. Not only did it confirm the ancient lineage, but it also showed a direct maternal match with DNA collected from fur samples found during the initial investigation of the poaching site. The mother bear was alive, and she was still out there. Satellite tracking data from the region showed unusual bear movement patterns. A large female bear, accompanied by two cubs, had been systematically moving through valleys and ridges, covering far more territory than typical for the species. Wildlife experts recognized this as searching behavior. Against all odds, the mother had not given up looking for her stolen cub. The discovery energized the entire rehabilitation team. They now faced an unprecedented possibility, reuniting a trafficked cub with its wild mother. Such an attempt had never been successful with bears, especially after months of separation. But the cub's strong wild instincts and the mother's persistent searching offered hope. Dr. Walsh and his team developed a carefully orchestrated plan. They would need to time everything perfectly, considering weather patterns, bear behavior, and the cub's readiness. The chosen location was a remote valley where the mother bear had been repeatedly sighted. Camera traps captured her regular visits to the area, showing she had established a pattern. The cub's preparation intensified. Its physical recovery had progressed remarkably, showing the resilience of its ancient bloodline. During rehabilitation, it had maintained its wild food preferences and natural behaviors, never fully adapting to human presence despite months in care. These traits, once concerning, now became crucial advantages for its return to the wild. Global media attention reached fever pitch as the reunion attempt approached. News organizations set up remote cameras, broadcasting to millions worldwide. Scientists gathered to document what could be a historic breakthrough in wildlife rehabilitation. The world held its breath, hoping for a miracle while preparing for potential heartbreak. The morning of the attempt arrived with perfect conditions. The team transported the cub to the chosen site before dawn, using all their experience to keep its stress levels minimal. They set up a soft release enclosure, allowing the cub to acclimate while keeping it safe. Scent markers, carefully preserved from its original rescue, were placed strategically around the area. Hours passed in tense waiting. The cub, sensing the familiar surroundings, became increasingly alert. Its behavior changed subtly, showing more of its wild nature with each passing moment. Then, in the golden light of late afternoon, motion sensors detected movement in the nearby forest. The mother bear had arrived. What followed seemed almost choreographed by nature itself. The mother bear, now visible through long-range cameras, caught her lost cub's scent. Her reaction was immediate and unmistakable. She moved with purpose toward the release site, her two other cubs following closely. The team, watching from a safe distance, barely dared to breathe. The cub recognized its mother's call instantly. Years of scientific training couldn't prevent tears from flowing among the team as they watched the cub respond, its voice carrying the same distinct tone they had first heard in that abandoned truck. The sound of family recognizing family echoed through the valley. When the release gate opened, the cub moved without hesitation. The reunion unfolded with an intensity that left even veteran wildlife experts speechless. Mother and cub approached each other cautiously at first, then with growing certainty. The mother bear's gentle inspection of her lost cub and the cub's immediate response to her presence confirmed what DNA had already told them. This was family finding family. As darkness fell, the bears moved together into the forest, the lost cub walking between its siblings as if it had never left. Tracking signals showed the family staying close through the night, moving deeper into their protected territory. Nature had reclaimed what humanity had nearly destroyed. The story of one small bear cub reshaped wildlife protection across the globe. Within months of the successful reunion, countries began adopting what became known as the Ancient Bear Protocols, a comprehensive set of wildlife protection measures. These new regulations closed loopholes that traffickers had exploited for decades, establishing severe penalties for wildlife crimes and creating dedicated task forces to enforce them. The unprecedented cooperation between nations during the cub's rescue inspired a new era of conservation. Countries that had previously guarded their environmental data began sharing information freely. The protected corridor, initially created for the ancient bear species, expanded into a vast network of connected wildlife sanctuaries spanning multiple borders. This model of borderless conservation became a template for protecting other endangered species. Scientific understanding of wildlife rehabilitation transformed. The successful reunion of the cub with its mother challenged long-held beliefs about animal behavior and family bonds. Research inspired by the case led to breakthroughs in tracking technology, habitat preservation, and wildlife psychology. Rehabilitation centers worldwide adopted new protocols that prioritized maintaining wild instincts and family connections whenever possible. The discovery of the ancient bear species continued to yield surprises. Regular monitoring of the protected areas revealed a small but stable population living in the remote valleys. Each new sighting captured by carefully placed cameras, showed the rescued cub thriving with its family. The golden flecks in its fur, now fully restored to their original brilliance, became a symbol of nature's resilience. Public engagement in wildlife conservation reached new heights. Schools developed conservation programs based on the bear cub's story. Children grew up understanding not just the importance of protecting wildlife, but the real possibility of making a difference. The next generation of conservationists, inspired by this single case, brought fresh energy and ideas to environmental protection. The wildlife trafficking network exposed during the investigation unraveled completely. Former members, seeing the global response to the cub's story, became informants. Their testimony led to hundreds of arrests and the rescue of countless animals. The illegal trade in rare species faced its most significant setback in history. Indigenous communities gained newfound respect in conservation efforts. Their traditional knowledge, proven vital in the bear cub's case, became an essential component of wildlife protection strategies. Modern science and ancient wisdom worked together, creating more effective and culturally sensitive conservation approaches. Dr. Walsh and Officer Reeves, whose actions started this remarkable journey, continued their work with renewed purpose. Their experience became a case study in wildlife protection training programs worldwide. They often reminded others that change could start with a single act of compassion, a lesson proved by one small bear cub's journey home. Years later, satellite imagery captured a remarkable sight. The rescued cub, now fully grown, had cubs of its own. They carried the same distinctive golden flecks in their fur, ensuring the ancient bloodline would continue. In the protected valleys where they roamed freely, nature's cycle continued unbroken, a living testament to what humanity could achieve when it chose to protect rather than destroy. The legacy of the bear cub story continues to grow. Each new conservation success, every species brought back from the brink of extinction, carries an echo of that first cry heard in an abandoned truck on a dark night. It stands as proof that even in the darkest moments, hope survives. That with compassion, determination, and cooperation, we can repair the damage done to our natural world. In the end, what began as a tragic tale of wildlife trafficking transformed into something much more powerful. A reminder that every living creature matters, that no cause is truly lost, and that the natural world, given a chance, has an extraordinary capacity to heal and thrive. The story of the ancient bear cub became more than just a rescue. It became a turning point in humanity's relationship with the wild, a legacy that continues to inspire and guide conservation efforts around the world. Continuing the powerful story of hope and transformation, we invite you to join our growing community of wildlife advocates. Subscribe to Legacy Stories on YouTube, where we bring you daily updates on conservation success stories, rare species discoveries, and the ongoing efforts to protect our planet's precious wildlife. Together, we can continue to make a difference, one story at a time. Let's ensure that remarkable tales like the ancient bear cub's journey continue to inspire future generations.